Good morning and welcome to the 5th episode, my lucky number, of Mojospresso, a caffeine-inspired shot of inspiration and perspective to help you on your Friday with the intention to win the morning and win the day. After last week's disaster where our coffee beans ran out just before we went live, I've suddenly realised I'm officially a coffee snob. But a big shout out to DC Coffee, who were listening live and sent across some magnificent beans, this local Melbourne coffee roaster. So I'm having the Duchess this morning, which is from Guatemala and Brazil. So a big thank you to DC Coffee. And we love the answers that you sent through last week. And the question we posed, if you were to get a tattoo, what would you get and where would you put it? Some of the answers. Jessica in Malibu, California said, until my last dying breath, which I think she has on her back. Trent Cochin said he'd get a heart on his forehead to remind everyone to lean in and be kind. I got a funny feeling Dusty will hold you to that, Koch. Punchy Williams said he'd get mad on his face, which stands for making a difference. Emily Louise said she'd get lean in and live on her index finger. Which one's the index finger? I think it's that one. Fudgy said, be where your feet are, and I'm assuming that would be on his feet. And Andrea Ward said, I am woman, hear me roar, but she didn't tell me where she'd put that tattoo. And a big thank you to everyone else who shared their tattoos and ideas as well. We love seeing the creativity. Okay, so to today's topic, and I've been reading a lot of books of late, haven't we all? But there was one book that literally jumped out at me, not only just with its all green cover, and not only the relevance of what it is to what we're going through right now, but we talk a lot about connection mindset and purpose mindset at Mojo. And this book is the first book I've read that actually explains in a really simple way the science behind why connection matters and why contribution matters so much. But more importantly, gave really simple strategies to build our own mental health without any of the jargon and any of the fluff. The author, Genevieve Hawkins, is also a very successful Australian businesswoman. She was an occupational therapist previously with a fascination for how people thrive under pressure. And she's also a good friend. So I thought today I'd actually get her on Mojo Espresso. So if this works, you're about to meet the magnificent Jen Hawkins. In the spirit of trying new things, and life is an experiment and a work in progress. Jen Hawkins, welcome.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked. Woohoo! One in a row. Thank God for that. I see you're at home, and I also see you're wearing purple. Is that for Wear It Purple Day?
It is Wear It Purple Day. Big call out to the young people in our LGBTI community and the celebration of inclusion today.
Fantastic, unreal. First of all, a massive congratulations. I got so excited when I saw your name in the bottom of this book. You've published a book on mental health in the middle of a pandemic where 3/4 of the world are talking about increased anxiety levels. Good timing, Jen. But what I loved about the book was the way you really explained these 4 chemicals in our bodies, which actually excited me. Cortisol being the baddie, I think, but the other 3 goodies in Oxytocin, Serotonin, and Dopamine. But you also explain in really simple ways how we can get more of these chemicals into our body for ourselves as an antidote to the cortisol. So, but I guess first up, can you just explain what's actually going on with our bodies right now with this pandemic that's actually challenging us?
Yeah, I will be, because it's kind of funny, because I wrote the book actually pre the pandemic and then was actually finalising it during it. So it's kind of like become even more relevant because of it.
Totally.
But I guess one of the key things from a brain perspective is we would love as humans that we're completely in control of ourselves and our thinking, and we are so not in control. So if you think about this in terms of like our breathing or digestion, we don't ever think about how we breathe, how we digest. Our body just knows what to do. So we you think about, we have 2 parts to the brain. We've got a primitive brain and we've got a thinking brain. And our primitive brain is absolutely geared for our survival. Like that's what it does. And so there's lots of different things that the brain does. but there's these particular chemicals in there. And one of these chemicals, and you talked about the baddie being cortisol, it is if it's in too big a dose, but not so bad if it's in smaller doses. So our primitive brain is constantly looking for threat. So have a think about this in concept of Neolithic man, and going, back then you're sort of going, okay, where's the threats going? Where's the bear or the saber-toothed tiger or whatever it might be that could be attacking us? So brain's constantly looking, and it can't tell the difference between a physical and a psychological threat, but it just keeps on going. If the world's not making sense or we see things are different, we're feeling under threat. So right now with the pandemic, there's so much uncertainty out there. We don't know where we're heading with it. Our brains are in overload, and the cortisol is just increasing too much for us, which is why there's such an increased awareness of, and people talking about how anxious they feel.
Gotcha. So in simple ways, what can we do to override this cortisol levels?
Yeah, so there's these three other amazing chemicals, and by the way, the brain does all sorts of other things, but these particular three chemicals are really, really useful in trying to balance out cortisol. So you go, cortisol's good in short amounts because it says, hey, there's a bit of a problem, you need to do something, but you want to balance it out with these three. So we have oxytocin, as you said, which is, first of all, with oxytocin, that's the drug, if you think of belonging, that you go, I feel I need connection, and we are hardwired for connection. Think about it in primitive terms. If we're alone out in the wild and we have these saber-toothed tigers everywhere, etc., then it's far more risky for us. Whereas if we're feeling as we're part of a community, then we feel safer. And our brains still feel that. If we're connected, this is great. The oxytocin keeps coming in there.
Yeah.
Our second one is serotonin, and serotonin is the I feel valued drug, if you like. So if you think about it again in Neolithic terms, in those spaces you go, if I'm the one that's able to kill the bear, or I'm the one that knows how to skin the bear, or I know the one that how to start the fire, our community around us goes, that's awesome, that's the thing that you do for us, so that's really good. So as long as I can contribute in some way, I feel valued and my serotonin gets triggered. And the dopamine is another really interesting one, because the dopamine is triggered by a sense of achievement, if you like, in what we do. So we are pattern-seeking creatures. We can't help to sort of look for where we are with pattern. And when we're actually going, I'm going to set a goal here, and I achieve it, I get a great rush of dopamine going, that's awesome, love it. And if we can keep getting those other three chemicals being triggered in our primitive brain, it can actually balance out the cortisol, and we feel so much better for it.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned in the book, which is what I love, so you've got these 4 chemicals, but they're not the 4 C's that we want to talk about. You talk about the triggering these chemicals through the 4 C's of this mental health pie. And the 4 C's stand for connection to self, connection to others, curiosity, which I love, and contribution, which I love even more. So we love metaphors and storytelling that stick in our brains. So I've got to ask, first and foremost, why a pie?
Yeah, I think it was actually because I was in London at the time, and I went to see Waitress at the West End. Awesome musical if you haven't seen it. But I love the analogy of the pie. So if I think the boring leadership things say it's a model or it's a framework. I think a pie describes it so much better. So you go, there's got to be these ingredients in it, otherwise it's not called a pie. But we need to keep baking the pie because we eat it, and we need another one, and we need variation in that pie as well. And we love those different flavours depending on what's going on. But the key thing is that the pie needs to have connection to self, connection to others, contribution and curiosity. So if you don't have those 4, you don't actually have a pie. And the pie is what actually helps our mental health.
Gotcha. So let's talk about connecting these chemicals to the pie, and maybe start with oxytocin and how we trigger more oxytocin. What do we need to do here? And for those listening, maybe think about how often you do these things, or where you can actually do them more.
Yeah, so if you think about oxytocin, that's connection to others, going, I belong, this is really great. So, in a pre-COVID world, I'd go out and hug your friends and spend time with them, socialising, etc. Or family, because that's what it is. Or for me, it was singing around the piano with my family, and that's the stuff which triggers major oxytocin. But in a current world, it's potentially things about how do I actually find, you can still hug the people that you live with. How do I find laughter with others? Because laughter is an amazing way of going, I'm connected with you, I've just laughed at the same thing. Or like I had an amazing, conversation with a group of school friends the other day, and we were all looking at photos from old school days, and so laughing at, oh my God, the clothes we wore and the haircuts that we had, etc. So that sense of connection with others, that is that laughter gets that oxytocin going.
Love it. Okay, next one. What about triggering more serotonin?
So remember, serotonin is that contribution to others. So the key thing here is about how do I help someone else? what is it that I can do to help someone, because then that will make me feel valued for what I do. So, it could be the, in current world, maybe if you've got kids, it's helping them with the homework, or it's going, I'm going to cook you an awesome meal, or I'm going to write a letter to someone that I think needs a bit of support, or at work, I'm going to coach someone. So it's that, how do I help, gives me my serotonin.
Gotcha. And finally, dopamine.
Yeah, so again, dopamine is kind of that achievement thing, and one of the key things I think during COVID is the kind of have a plan and get through that plan is kind of like, end of the day, yay, I've achieved that stuff. So if you're not working and you're struggling with it, a plan, a bit of structure to the day really helps you to get through the day. At the end of the day, you go, great, I've achieved that. If you're at work like me, the key with a plan is don't make too big a plan, because then you get cortisol because you haven't actually achieved it all. But the sense of achievement in a day by setting a goal is really important.
Got it. Okay, so connecting to others triggers oxytocin, contribution triggers serotonin, and curiosity or pattern recognition triggers dopamine, or just achieving mini goals, as you said. What about connection to self, Jen, as that's also part of the pie?
Yeah, it is, Ben. So it's a really important thing about we just need to learn to listen to ourselves. And if we're not listening to ourselves and getting that self-awareness, then we're not actually going to be doing the right things with the other parts of the chemicals. So it's really that being, how do we actually go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm feeling this way, I'm not quite right, I think I need to go consciously and go and get one of those other chemicals.
Got it. And last question for you before I let you go. One of the greatest truisms is that no one in this world can do anything in this world on their own. We all need mentors. We all need people around us. And in the last chapter of your book, you speak about being the CEO of your own life, but having this board around you. And you actually talked about 6 specific archetypes of people that we need in our lives. Could you just go through that 6? And again, for those listening, see if you have one of these archetypes in your life, and if not, go about and trying to find one of them.
Yeah, so really to say 6 people, you can't have one person having all 6, so I don't think you can write one person down, but you can write multiple people for one, and sometimes someone plays 2 roles. So if I go through the 6, the first one is the spark, and so it's the person when you go, you're just flat and you're not too sure what you're doing, it's where's your inspiration from, where do you get that energy from that gets you inspired about, I think I can achieve. So it's kind of a bit of a dopamine hit about that curiosity going, interesting, might do that. Second one is the strength. And so that's the person you go to when you've fallen off your bike and you're feeling like, I'm no good, I can't do stuff. And they're the one that reminds you of how awesome you are and what strengths you have that can actually bring you back to the table and go, I can do this. The third one's a really interesting one because that's the serious. And interestingly enough, they trigger a little bit of mild cortisol because they're the one you go to when you're absolutely on cloud 9 and going, I'm going to conquer the world. Yeah. And that person goes, love you. Just have a check about a couple of pitfalls here because you might want to be careful you're not going to go and fall off a cliff.
Kind of call bullshit on you a little bit.
Yeah, so mild cortisol, really, really important. The fourth one is the Stairmaster. So the Stairmaster is the person that kind of triggers your dopamine as well about achievement because they're like your personal trainer going, what are you doing, Ben? Have you done this? Have you achieved this? Where are you at? Come on. So holding you to account a bit more for doing the things that you need to do to make yourself well. Yeah. The fifth one is the seer. And so that's what we typically think as a mentor. Who do we reach out to go, how the hell did you deal with this situation? So it's the words of wisdom that you're after from someone who really values you and wants to help you move forward. And the last one, so important, and it's one of the ones that people often miss, is the silly. So when all else fails, having laughter with someone makes a massive difference in triggering oxytocin for us and really getting us back to a sense of belonging that enables us to move forward. So you've got to have some funny people around you.
Yeah, that's probably my favourite. And my favourite quote is not a shred of evidence in favour of the idea that life is serious. Last question for you. Finish this sentence. If you really knew me, you would know.
Oh, okay. I can answer also an exact no. If you really knew me, you would know that one of my favourite things to do to help me with my mental health is finding a favourite recipe and cooking it on Saturday afternoon, planning it for friends coming over on a Saturday night or family during COVID. And in fact, my best way of doing that is whilst I am listening to music and singing and dancing while I'm cooking.
Love it. Okay, I won't get you to sing as we sign off. But again, a huge congratulations. On behalf of all Australians, thank you so much for writing this book at this particular time in our lives. I'm really, really proud of you, Jen. All the very best. And for everyone listening in, thanks for following us again. Send us any feedback or questions that you have and we'll endeavour to answer them throughout the week. And until next week, I'll see you on the other side in the soup. All the best. See you, Jen.
Thanks, Ben.